Hello and welcome to the Intentional Brief, your weekly video update on the one big thing in cybersecurity for growth stage companies, their management teams, and investors. I'm your host, Shay Colson, managing partner at Intentional Cybersecurity, and you can find us online at intentionalcyber.com. Today is Monday, September 30th. 2024, almost October, and we've got a good chance to look at some news this week, not so much on the big picture, but on a very small picture about a specific vulnerability, but use that as a lesson to help us understand how we can make the most of threat intelligence and avoid overreacting from the security side. So let's go ahead and dive right in. There's been actually quite a bit of discussion in the last week in certain pockets of the cybersecurity ecosystem about a newly discovered vulnerability and some research that was published on a small Linux utility known as CUPS, or the Common Unix Printing System. This tool is an open source component that enables your Unix or Linux system to function as a print server and actually print things, which some people still want to do. And now the problem, of course, is there's a vulnerability in this utility that allows an attacker to use these printers themselves to take over the host machine or server. The rub here is, and the reason that it's getting a lot of attention, is that this vulnerability was released with a Common Vulnerability Scoring System, or CVSS, score of 9.9 out of 10, which makes it sound as bad as it can get. The truth, of course, is a little more nuanced, and in reality, this exploit, while it can be exploited, is part of a chain of vulnerabilities that need to be used together and require a few different things to happen for an attacker to successfully commandeer a machine. And that includes, this CUPS service has to be enabled either by default or manually. The attacker has to have access to the server. That server has to have access to the internet or internal traffic where the attacker can reach it. Then the attacker has to add a malicious print server or printer itself by advertising that on the network. And then the potential victim has to print to that printer from that server. And ultimately that allows the execution of malicious code and then compromise. So while there is a lot that goes into it, that wasn't in the headline, right? The headline was that this was a CVSS 9.9, that it's a Linux driver. And the truth is, it's a lot more complicated than that, and it doesn't even impact all Linux distributions. So while we definitely do want to be aware of these zero-day vulnerabilities and new things that might impact our enterprise, we don't want to turn into Chicken Little either and run around either to our own internal leadership teams or our operations teams kind of saying that the sky is falling every time something like this crops up, because we simply can't afford to run like that. So how should we think about countering this? I think the first and core component of this is understanding what's in our environment. If we don't have any Linux systems running in our shop, then we don't have a problem with this, right? So understanding what you have so that you can understand the implications of these new pieces of information for you is critical. Secondly, and this is something we talk about often on this program, is having a solid diversity of defense and defense in-depth program that keeps you from being impacted or reduces the impact of vulnerabilities like this until they're able to be patched and updated. In this case, you can do things like not exposing your servers to the internet, not allowing lateral traffic east and west from different parts of your network with segmentation or VLANs, limiting the privileges of local users so that they can't add new printers, and other basic controls that would disrupt this attack chain successfully, and make sure that you have endpoint detection and response deployed on your servers as well, so that if something did happen, they would be detected and, in theory, isolated, quarantined, remediated, something to limit the impact of this if the attack was successful. I think this is an important mindset shift for us to get right on the defender side, because there's going to continue to be new 0 days. There's going to continue to be new announcements, either from threat researchers with this name and announce approach to try and gain visibility for their own purposes, whatever those might be, or from actual attackers who are looking to compromise systems with these vulnerabilities. By being measured in both our responses and our defenses, I think we'll be best positioned to find success, find resilience in the long run, which is what we're all working towards. Because remember, attackers just want to win the battle. We want to win the war. From a fundraising perspective, we closed out Q3 because October starts in 2 days with a massive week, more than $41 billion in newly committed capital. This includes the blockbuster announcement from Citigroup and Apollo Global Management of their newly launched $25 billion private credit direct funding program. And there were a couple of other secondary funds that would have been big on any other week and actually are quite small this week in comparison, including the Stepstone Group raising $7.4 billion for their fifth private equities secondary fund. And KKR putting up $4.6 billion for their debut fund focused on North American mid-market buyouts. All of these funds seemed well targeted to me to the market that we're going to see moving forward in this next cycle, which is probably why they're able to put up such numbers. And just to put another piece on the scale on the other end, it wasn't all good news. There were several articles this week noting, one, that global M&A activity is expected to weaken until after the US election, probably not surprising to anyone here. And two, that startup M&A trends remain sluggish, also probably not a surprise to anyone here. Both of these things will remain true, but I also think there's still good to great opportunity out there for strong companies with durable revenue. So with that, a reminder, you can find all of the links to the articles we talked about in the comment section below. You can find back issues and written transcripts of these videos at intentionalcyber.com, and we will see you next week for another edition of the Intentional Brief.